JFK Airport was buzzing with travelers. People rushed past each other, dragging suitcases, checking their phones, or sipping overpriced coffee. The bright overhead lights reflected off the polished tile floor, creating an almost blinding effect. Among the crowd sat Jonathan Mitchell, a billionaire CEO, waiting for his flight to Los Angeles. Dressed in an expensive navy blue suit, he exuded power and success. His Rolex gleamed under the airport lights, and the Louis Vuitton suitcase beside him was packed with the essentials of a man who controlled billion-dollar deals. Before going to the next, please subscribe to our channel, like and share with friends. Jonathan had built his empire from nothing. Mitchell Enterprises was a global name in real estate and luxury brands. He was known for his sharp business instincts and ruthless decision-making. Time was his most valuable asset, and every second of his life was scheduled to perfection. As he sat in the first-class lounge, he scrolled through emails on his phone, barely noticing the world around him. He was closing a $500 million deal, and his attention was locked on the details. His flight was delayed, which annoyed him. He hated waiting. But just as he was about to check his stock portfolio, something unexpected happened. "Excuse me, sir." Jonathan looked up. Standing before him was a little girl, no older than 7 or 8. She had long brown hair that was tangled and unbrushed. Her small hands were clenched into nervous fists, and her big brown eyes held a mixture of fear and determination. Jonathan frowned. It was rare for strangers to approach him, especially at an airport. His aura usually kept people at a distance. "Yes," he said, his voice clipped and impatient. The girl hesitated, glancing around as if she was afraid someone would stop her. Then in a small voice she asked, "Can you spare some change? I'm really hungry." Jonathan blinked. He hadn't expected that. For a moment he just stared at her, processing what she had said. A child asking for money inside an international airport? That wasn't normal. His first instinct was to ignore her. He wasn't a charity worker. He was a businessman. "Where are your parents?" he asked, scanning the lounge. She looked down, biting her lip. "I don't have any." Jonathan felt an unfamiliar sensation in his chest. He had met thousands of people in his life, powerful politicians, billionaires, CEOs. But this girl was different. Something about her felt familiar. He didn't believe in coincidences, but his gut told him that this encounter was important. "What's your name?" he asked. The girl hesitated, then whispered, "Emma?" Jonathan's grip on his phone tightened. He had heard that name before. A memory from years ago stirred in the back of his mind, but he couldn't grasp it fully. "How did you get here, Emma?" he asked, his tone softer now. She swallowed hard. I just walked in. Nobody stopped me." Jonathan glanced around. There were security guards everywhere. How had a homeless little girl managed to get past them? Something wasn't adding up. Jonathan felt a strange pull toward this child. He had spent his whole life running toward success, but now for the first time he felt like he was running into his past. His flight was still delayed, but suddenly his billion-dollar deal didn't feel as important as the girl standing in front of him. "Come with me," he said, standing up. Emma flinched. "Are you gonna call the police?" Jonathan shook his head. "No. I'm going to get you something to eat." Her big brown eyes studied him carefully. Then hesitantly she nodded. Jonathan picked up his suitcase and led her toward the airport cafe, unaware that this moment would change his life forever. Before going to the next, please subscribe to our channel, like and share with friends. Jonathan Mitchell, a man who had spent his life making billion-dollar decisions, now found himself sitting across from a hungry little girl at a small cafe inside JFK Airport. He wasn't sure why he had stopped to help her. He wasn't a sentimental man. He never let emotions interfere with his work. And yet, there was something about this child that made it impossible for him to walk away. Emma sat across from him, her small hands gripping the glass of orange juice he had bought her. Her messy brown hair framed her pale face, and her oversized sweater looked like it had been worn for weeks without a wash. The moment the food arrived, a sandwich and a bowl of soup, Emma didn't wait. She tore into it like she hadn't eaten in days. Jonathan watched in silence. For a man who built his empire on reading people, Emma was a mystery. Jonathan had grown up poor. Unlike many of his business rivals, he hadn't inherited wealth. He had fought for every penny, worked through sleepless nights, and clawed his way to the top. And now, he was worth over $500 million. Yet, sitting in this cafe watching a little girl eat as if it was her first meal in days, he was reminded of a past he had tried to forget. After a few minutes he spoke. "Where are you from, Emma?" She paused, looking up with cautious eyes. "Here and there," she mumbled before taking another bite. He frowned. Where's your home? Emma hesitated. I don't have one. Jonathan's grip on his coffee cup tightened. Where do you sleep at night? She shrugged. Wherever I can. His stomach twisted. He had seen poverty but never this up close. A child, alone, homeless and asking strangers for money? How had no one noticed her? Jonathan leaned forward. Emma, tell me the truth. Do you have anyone? A family? A guardian? She hesitated, then whispered, I had a mom. His breath caught. He exhaled slowly. Where is she now? Emma's eyes filled with something deep, something painful. She's gone. Jonathan felt a sharp sting in his chest. What was her name? He asked, though he wasn't sure why. Emma lowered her spoon and looked directly into his eyes. Her name was Olivia. Jonathan's entire world shifted. His heart pounded in his chest. Olivia. A name from his past. A name he hadn't spoken in 8 years. For a moment he couldn't breathe. His mind raced back to a time when he was not a millionaire, not a CEO, but just a struggling man in love with a woman named Olivia. Could it be? Could Emma be his daughter? Jonathan forced himself to stay calm. He couldn't assume anything yet. Emma, he said carefully, what was your mom like? Emma smiled sadly. She was kind. She always told me stories before bed. She made everything feel safe. Jonathan's throat tightened. That sounded exactly like Olivia. And your dad? He asked, almost afraid of the answer. Emma's expression hardened. I never met him. Mom said he left before I was born. Jonathan felt like the air had been knocked out of his lungs. He had never left Olivia. She had left him. And now, sitting across from this child who had her mother's eyes, he was starting to wonder if Olivia had kept something from him. Something that could change his life forever. Jonathan Mitchell, the self-made millionaire CEO, sat frozen in his chair. The little girl across from him, Emma, had just said a name that sent a shockwave through his soul. Olivia. The name of the only woman he had ever truly loved. The woman who had disappeared from his life 8 years ago without a trace. And now, a hungry child with Olivia's eyes and an unmistakable resemblance was sitting in front of him. Jonathan's fingers tightened around his coffee cup. Was Emma his daughter? His mind raced. Olivia had never told him she was pregnant. If she had, would he have left? Never. But if Emma was truly his, then why had Olivia never reached out? Jonathan swallowed hard and forced himself to speak. Emma, how old are you? She tilted her head, chewing the last bite of her sandwich. 7. I'll be 8 next month. 7. That timeline fit perfectly. Jonathan's pulse pounded. Olivia had left 8 years ago. Had she been pregnant when she left? His hands trembled slightly as he pushed his coffee aside. He needed more answers. Jonathan forced himself to remain calm. He knew Emma had been through a lot, and pushing too hard might scare her away. Instead, he softened his tone. Emma, your mom? Olivia. Do you remember what happened to her? Emma's expression darkened. She got sick. Really sick. We went to different doctors, but Emma hesitated, looking down at her hands. She didn't make it. Jonathan clenched his jaw. Olivia was gone? A sharp pain stabbed his chest. He had dreamed of seeing her again, of getting answers, of maybe even rekindling what they had lost. But now, that chance was gone forever. He took a deep breath. When did she pass away? Emma bit her lip. Last year. We lived in a small apartment and she tried to keep working, but she got too weak. Jonathan felt like the air had been sucked out of his lungs. Olivia had struggled. She had fought to survive. And he hadn't been there. He was a millionaire. He had the power to help. But Olivia had never reached out. What? Jonathan's mind was spinning, but one thing was now crystal clear. If Olivia had never told him about Emma, then she had kept her a secret on purpose. Jonathan looked at Emma carefully. She was young, but she was smart. She had survived on her own for months, maybe longer. Emma, he said, trying to keep his voice steady, do you know anything about your dad? Emma's lips pressed into a thin line. Mom didn't talk about him much. She just said he left. Jonathan's heart twisted. That wasn't true. He had never left Olivia. She had walked away. But why would she tell Emma a lie? Unless Olivia had been trying to protect her. Jonathan exhaled. He had spent years convincing himself that Olivia had left because she didn't love him. But what if there was another reason? What if someone had forced her to go? And if that was true, then who had taken Olivia away from him? Jonathan leaned back, rubbing his temples. He needed to think. He and Olivia had been young, madly in love. He had been working 2 jobs while trying to launch his startup. Money had been tight, but they had been happy. Then one day she had just disappeared. No explanation. No note. No phone call. He had searched for her. He had begged her friends for information. Nothing. It had taken him years to bury the pain and focus on his career. And now, sitting across from a little girl who might be his own flesh and blood, he was beginning to realize he had never truly let Olivia go. Jonathan took a deep breath and looked at Emma again. She was innocent. She didn't know about the storm of questions brewing in his mind. All she knew was that she was alone. And Jonathan Mitchell, one of the most powerful men in the country, wasn't going to let that continue. Emma, he said gently, where have you been living? She hesitated. After Mom was gone, I stayed in the apartment for a while. But the landlord said I couldn't stay there without an adult. I tried to find a shelter, but they were full. Jonathan's stomach twisted in anger. His child, had been thrown into the streets. His voice was firm. You're not sleeping outside again. Emma blinked. I wasn't asking for help. Jonathan's expression softened. I know. But I'm offering. Emma hesitated, as if she wasn't used to accepting kindness. Finally she nodded. Jonathan didn't know how, but one thing was certain. He was going to find out the truth. If Emma was truly his daughter, then everything in his life was about to change. And if someone had taken Olivia away from him all those years ago, they were going to pay. Before going to the next, please subscribe to our channel, like and share with friends. Jonathan Mitchell had spent years building his empire. Power, wealth, success. These were the pillars of his life. He controlled businesses, made billion-dollar deals, and commanded respect everywhere he went. But now he was sitting in an airport lounge, completely shaken by a 7-year-old girl. Emma. The child who had approached him for change, who had looked at him with those deep brown eyes that felt hauntingly familiar. And then she had spoken her mother's name, Olivia. Jonathan's heart still pounded from the revelation. Could it be her? Could this little girl be his daughter? It felt impossible. Yet the pieces were falling into place. Jonathan sat frozen, watching Emma as she slowly counted the $100 bill he had given her, carefully folding it and placing it into a tiny purse. His mind raced. He needed answers. No. Emma, he said, his voice softer than before. Your mother. Olivia. What was her full name? The girl tilted her head. Olivia Carter. Jonathan felt like the ground had just disappeared beneath him. That was her. The woman who had disappeared from his life without a trace. The only woman he had ever truly loved. And now her daughter was standing in front of him. Was she his daughter too? Jonathan swallowed hard, forcing himself to remain calm. And, where is she now? He asked. Emma's face fell. A shadow passed over her eyes. She's sick, she said quietly. Really sick. Jonathan's chest tightened. Sick. Olivia was sick? Oh, when? Why hadn't he known? Where is she? His voice was urgent now. Emma hesitated, looking around nervously. We're staying in a small motel nearby. She doesn't like me talking to strangers. Jonathan clenched his jaw. He wasn't a stranger. He was Olivia's past. And maybe, just maybe, he was Emma's father. Jonathan's mind drifted back to 8 years ago. He had been a rising businessman, consumed by work, obsessed with success. Olivia had been his light. She had loved him for who he was, not for his wealth. She had believed in him even when he barely believed in himself. And yet she had vanished. No note. No goodbye. He had searched for her. Everywhere. And now here was Emma. Was this why Olivia had left? Had she been carrying his child and chosen to walk away? Jonathan felt a mix of emotions, anger, confusion, guilt. If Olivia had kept this from him, why? Had she believed he wouldn't want a child? Had she thought he wouldn't be there for them? Or had something else happened? Jonathan took a deep breath, forcing himself to think clearly. Right now there was only one thing to do. Find Olivia. He reached for his wallet and pulled out a business card. Handing it to Emma, he said, "Take me to her." Emma hesitated. I don't know if she'd want to see you. Jonathan smiled slightly. Let's find out. She studied his face for a long moment, then finally nodded. Whatever happened next, Jonathan knew one thing for sure. He wasn't leaving without answers. And this time he wasn't letting Olivia disappear again. Before going to the next, please subscribe to our channel, like and share with friends. Jonathan Mitchell sat in the back of a yellow cab, watching as the city lights blurred past the window. His mind was racing. Beside him, little Emma sat quietly, her small hands clutching the straps of her worn-out backpack. Jonathan had no idea what to expect. 8 years had passed since Olivia vanished from his life. Now, out of nowhere, he was about to see her again. And she was sick. The thought sent a chill down his spine. He glanced at Emma, studying her delicate features, her deep brown eyes, the slight curve of her lips. She looked so much like Olivia. And the more he looked, the more he saw himself too. Could she really be his daughter? The cab slowed down in front of a rundown motel on the outskirts of town. Jonathan stared at the flickering neon sign. The place looked old, forgotten, abandoned by time. His chest tightened. How had Olivia ended up here? Emma hopped out of the cab, her tiny feet moving quickly across the cracked pavement. She motioned for Jonathan to follow. He paid the driver and stepped out, inhaling the cold night air. The motel's dimly lit corridors smelled of dampness and dust. The walls were covered in peeling paint, and the flickering bulbs cast eerie shadows. Emma led him to room 107. She hesitated for a moment, then knocked softly. "Mom? It's me." Silence. Then, after a few seconds, a weak voice came from inside. "Emma? Sweetheart." Jonathan's heart pounded. That voice. It was weaker than he remembered. More fragile. But it was her. Olivia. The door opened slowly and Jonathan saw her. His breath caught in his throat. Olivia stood in the doorway, her figure smaller than he remembered, her face pale and tired. Her once vibrant hazel eyes were filled with exhaustion. She froze when she saw him. Her eyes widened. Fear. Pain. "Jonathan," she whispered. He couldn't speak. He just stood there, taking her in, the woman who had once been his everything, now looking like she had been through a battle she had barely survived. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Olivia's gaze shifted to Emma, then back to Jonathan. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jonathan clenched his jaw. "I should be asking you that." Olivia's lips parted, but no words came out. Emma broke the silence. "Mom, he gave me $100. Jonathan swallowed hard. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice raw. "Why did you leave?" Olivia's eyes filled with unshed tears. I didn't have a choice," she whispered. Jonathan's hands curled into fists. "No choice?" "She had a choice. She chose to leave. She chose to disappear." "Why?" His voice was sharp, demanding. Olivia looked away. "Because I knew you wouldn't have wanted this." She gestured toward Emma. Jonathan's breath hitched. She was confirming it. Emma was his daughter. The world seemed to tilt beneath Jonathan's feet. His entire life had been built on control, precision, power. But this was chaos. This was 8 years of fatherhood stolen from him. He took a shaky breath. "You thought I wouldn't have wanted her?" His voice was a mix of anger and hurt. Olivia's face twisted with emotion. "You were building your empire, Jonathan. You were obsessed with your work. You never wanted a family." Jonathan felt like she had just punched him in the gut. Was that really how she had seen him? Had he been so blind? "I had a right to know," he said, his voice cold. Olivia flinched. "I know," she whispered. "And I'm sorry." Jonathan took a step closer. "Tell me everything." Olivia hesitated. Then finally she spoke. "When I found out I was pregnant, I was scared. You were always working. Always chasing something bigger. I didn't think you wanted a child." Jonathan opened his mouth to protest, but she held up a weak hand. "But that's not the real reason I left." He froze. "There was more?" Olivia swallowed hard. "Someone threatened me, Jonathan." His stomach dropped. "What?" She looked up at him, eyes filled with fear and sadness. "Someone didn't want me in your life. And they made sure I disappeared." Jonathan's heart pounded. Oh, who had done this? Who had stolen 8 years of his daughter's life from him? A dangerous fire lit inside him. He would find out. And when he did, he would make them pay. Before going to the next, please subscribe to our channel, like and share with friends. Jonathan Mitchell had built his life on logic, precision, and power. But now, standing in this rundown motel room, looking at the woman who had once been the love of his life, he felt nothing but chaos. His gaze darted between Olivia and Emma, his daughter. His daughter. The words still felt foreign in his mind. He should have been angry, furious. But something about Olivia's fear-stricken eyes held him back. She wasn't just guilty. She was terrified. And then she had said it. "Someone didn't want me in your life." Jonathan's heart pounded as he stared at Olivia. "Who?" She hesitated. Jonathan stepped forward. "Olivia, tell me. Who threatened you?" Her lips parted, but no words came out. She looked down, clenching her hands into fists. Emma sat silently on the edge of the bed, her legs swinging back and forth. She didn't understand the weight of what was happening. But Jonathan did. Someone had forced Olivia to disappear. And now he was going to find out who. Jonathan's voice was sharp. "Olivia, you have to trust me. Who made you leave?" She exhaled shakily. "It wasn't just one person," she whispered. "It was..." Her voice cracked. Jonathan felt a sinking feeling in his gut. "It was your father." His entire world tilted. His father? Charles Mitchell. The man who had built the Mitchell empire, the ruthless billionaire businessman, the father who had always pushed Jonathan to be stronger, faster, better. Jonathan took a step back. "No," he muttered. "That's not possible." Olivia's eyes filled with unshed tears. "It is. And it's the truth." Jonathan's hands curled into fists. "Tell me everything." Olivia looked away. "I found out I was pregnant 8 years ago. I was scared, Jonathan. You were so focused on your work, on proving yourself to your father. I didn't know if you'd want..." She paused, glancing at Emma. "If you'd want a child." Jonathan opened his mouth to speak, but she held up a hand. "I was about to tell you," she continued. "But then your father came to see me." Jonathan stiffened. "He offered me money to disappear," Olivia said, her voice shaking. "A lot of money. He told me that a child would ruin your career. That you weren't ready to be a father." Jonathan's stomach twisted in rage. His father had done this? His father had stolen his family from him? "I refused," Olivia whispered. "I told him I wasn't going anywhere." Jonathan's heart pounded. "Then what happened?" Olivia hesitated. "A week later, I had a break-in." Jonathan froze. "I don't know who they were. But they trashed my apartment. They took my phone, my documents, everything. And then I got a call." She swallowed hard. "A man's voice. He told me if I didn't leave by morning, I wouldn't live to see the next day." Jonathan's breath hitched. His father hadn't just bribed Olivia. He had threatened her life. Jonathan felt like he had been punched in the gut. His father, his own flesh and blood, had orchestrated this? Had taken his child away from him? He clenched his jaw. "Why didn't you come to me?" Jonathan asked, his voice raw. Olivia gave a sad smile. "Would you have believed me?" Jonathan flinched. The truth was he didn't know. Back then he had been different, obsessed with proving himself, desperate for his father's approval. Maybe he wouldn't have listened. Maybe that was why Olivia never took the risk. A deep anger burned inside him. His father had spent years shaping him into a machine. But this time, Jonathan wasn't going to follow his father's rules. A promise to fight. Jonathan took a deep breath and knelt in front of Emma. She looked up at him with curious eyes. "I didn't know about you," he said softly. "But now I do." She blinked. "And I promise you, no one will ever take you away from me again." Emma tilted her head. "Does that mean you're my dad?" Jonathan felt something in his chest tighten. He nodded. Emma grinned. "Cool." Olivia wiped her eyes, watching them. Jonathan turned back to her. "We can't stay here," he said firmly. "If my father sent people after you before, he can do it again." Olivia nodded. "I know." Jonathan grabbed his phone. "Pack your things. We're leaving." Olivia hesitated. "Jonathan, where are we going?" He clenched his jaw. "To my father's house." Olivia's eyes widened. "Are you crazy? He's dangerous." Jonathan's voice was cold. "So am I." Before going to the next, please subscribe to our channel, like and share with friends. Jonathan's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as he drove through the dark streets of Manhattan. Olivia sat beside him, her face pale and tense, while Emma slept peacefully in the back seat, oblivious to the storm brewing around them. His mind was a battlefield of rage, betrayal, and determination. His father, Charles Mitchell, the man he had spent his whole life trying to impress, had orchestrated the destruction of his family. Jonathan wasn't the same man he had been years ago. He was no longer the obedient son desperate for approval. Now he was a father. And he would burn everything down before letting Charles Mitchell control his life again. Olivia turned to him. "Jonathan, are you sure about this?" His jaw clenched. "He stole 8 years from me. He tried to erase my daughter from my life. I need answers." She hesitated. "And what if he doesn't give them?" Jonathan's eyes darkened. "Then I take them." The iron gates of the Mitchell estate loomed ahead, standing as tall and imposing as the man who lived behind them. Jonathan punched in the security code, a code that hadn't changed in years. As the gates slowly creaked open, Olivia tensed. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. Jonathan glanced at her. Yes, I do. The car rolled up the long, winding driveway, coming to a stop in front of the grand entrance. Jonathan barely put the car in park before he stepped out, his fists clenched at his sides. He had barely taken 2 steps toward the door when it swung open. And there he was, Charles Mitchell. Dressed in a tailored black suit, his silver hair neatly combed back, he exuded power and authority. But Jonathan wasn't a boy anymore. And he wasn't afraid. Charles's sharp eyes flicked over Jonathan, then to Olivia and finally to the sleeping child in the back seat. His expression didn't change. He knew. Jonathan's blood boiled. You stole my family from me, he growled. Charles raised an eyebrow. I did what was necessary. Jonathan stormed forward, his rage barely contained. You threatened Olivia. You made her disappear. You made me think she left me. Charles sighed as if this conversation was a mild inconvenience. Jonathan, let's not be dramatic. Jonathan's hands curled into fists. You had people break into her home. You told her she wouldn't live to see another day. How is that not dramatic? Charles didn't blink. I protected you. Jonathan laughed bitterly. Protected me? From what? Charles's eyes gleamed with calculated coldness. From weakness. Jonathan felt as if he had been slapped. Charles continued, his voice smooth and unwavering. You were young. Impulsive. Foolish. If you had found out Olivia was pregnant back then, you would have thrown away your career. You would have lost everything I built for you. And for what? Jonathan's body trembled with fury. For my daughter. Charles scoffed. A child doesn't fit into the life of a real leader. A real leader doesn't let emotions dictate his actions. Jonathan's chest tightened. That's why you did it? Because you thought I'd be weaker with a family? Charles took a step forward, lowering his voice. I've built an empire, Jonathan. I needed you to be strong enough to inherit it. Do you think I had the luxury of love? Of softness? No. And neither do you. Jonathan shook his head. I don't want your empire. I don't want anything from you. Charles's expression remained unreadable. You say that now. But you will. Jonathan took a deep breath, his anger settling into something colder. More dangerous. You don't control me anymore, he said firmly. Charles smirked. Oh? And what exactly do you plan to do now? Jonathan turned toward the car where Olivia had stepped out, standing protectively near Emma. He looked back at his father. I'm taking my family. And I'm walking away. For the first time, something flickered in Charles's eyes. You're making a mistake. Jonathan stared him down. No. You did. Without another word, he turned, walking back toward Olivia and Emma. He wouldn't give Charles the satisfaction of another second of his time. He had everything he needed. A family. A purpose. And finally, freedom. As they drove away from the Mitchell estate, Olivia exhaled shakily. That was intense. Jonathan glanced at her, then at the rearview mirror where Emma was still fast asleep. He reached over, gently taking Olivia's hand in his. We're done looking back, he said softly. She smiled. For the first time. I believe that. Jonathan glanced at his daughter, then back at the road ahead. For the first time in his life, he wasn't chasing power. He was chasing something real. Before going to next, please subscribe to our channel, like and share with friends. Jonathan sat in the dimly lit waiting area of his 5-star hotel, his mind still processing the encounter with Emma, the little girl who had asked him for change at the airport. Since that moment, his life had taken an unexpected turn. He had found out that she was not just another child in need but a missing piece of his past, Olivia's daughter. He couldn't shake the feeling that fate had deliberately placed Emma in his path. The girl had something familiar about her, the way she tilted her head when she was curious, the way her eyes held a quiet strength. Now, after hiring a private investigator to dig into Olivia's life, Jonathan had the results sitting in a file before him. His hands trembled as he opened the folder. The first thing he saw was a picture of Olivia taken recently. She was thinner than he remembered, her once bright eyes now carrying a hint of sadness. The report detailed her struggles, how she had moved from city to city, working multiple jobs to raise Emma. Jonathan's heart clenched as he realized the depth of her sacrifices. But then as he flipped to the next page, his breath caught. There, in bold letters, was a revelation he hadn't expected. Emma was his daughter. His fingers tightened around the paper, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. He read it again, hoping he had misunderstood. But the DNA test results were clear. A mix of emotions surged through him. Anger at Olivia for never telling him, guilt for not searching for her sooner, and an overwhelming sense of loss for the years he had missed with his own child. Jonathan leaned back, running a hand through his hair. Memories of Olivia flooded his mind, the way she used to laugh at his terrible jokes, the way her eyes sparkled whenever she talked about her dreams. They had been young, foolish, and in love. But his ambitions had pushed him away from her. Back then he had been obsessed with building his company, believing that wealth and success would bring him happiness. He had never known that walking away from Olivia meant walking away from his unborn child. His mind raced. He had to talk to Olivia. He had to see Emma again. But what if Olivia refused to let him in their lives? What if she resented him? Jonathan wasn't used to feeling powerless. As a CEO, he was used to making decisions and controlling outcomes. But this was something entirely different. Determined, Jonathan grabbed his car keys and drove to the address listed in the report. His sleek black car felt out of place as he pulled up in front of a modest apartment building in a quiet neighborhood. He had never stepped into this part of town before, but tonight, nothing else mattered. His heart pounded as he knocked on the door. A few seconds passed before it slowly creaked open. Olivia stood there, her expression shifting from shock to guarded suspicion. "Jonathan." Her voice was barely above a whisper. He swallowed hard. "Olivia, we need to talk." She hesitated but then stepped aside, letting him in. The apartment was small but cozy, filled with signs of a life she had built for Emma. There were crayons scattered on the coffee table, a half-finished puzzle on the floor. Jonathan turned to face Olivia. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Because you left, Jonathan. You made it clear that your career was more important than anything else. I wasn't going to beg you to stay." Guilt stabbed at him. "But I had a right to know about Emma." Olivia crossed her arms. "Did you? You never looked back. You never asked about me. What was I supposed to think?" Jonathan exhaled sharply. "You're right. I should have searched for you. I should have been there." He ran a hand over his face trying to find the right words. "But now that I know, I want to be in Emma's life. Please, Olivia. Let me fix this." A long silence stretched between them. Finally, Olivia looked away, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I can trust you, Jonathan." His heart clenched at her words. He had finally found his daughter, but earning his place in her life wouldn't be easy. Would Olivia let Jonathan be a part of Emma's life? Could he make up for the years he had lost? Before going to next, please subscribe to our channel, like and share with friends. Jonathan stood in Olivia's small apartment, his heart pounding in his chest. The revelation that Emma was his daughter had shaken him to his core, and now he was standing face to face with the woman he had once loved, the woman he had unknowingly abandoned. Olivia's arms were crossed tightly over her chest, her eyes filled with suspicion and hurt. The weight of his past choices pressed down on him like a stone. "You can't just walk in here and expect me to forget everything," Olivia said, her voice sharp. "You left me, Jonathan. You never looked back." Jonathan swallowed hard. "I know, and I regret it every single day. I made a mistake, Olivia. A terrible mistake. But I didn't know about Emma. If I had, I would have never." Olivia let out a bitter laugh. "Would you have stayed? Or would you have just sent money and called it responsibility?" Jonathan flinched. He deserved that. "I can't change the past," he admitted, his voice softer now. "But I can try to fix the future." Olivia sighed, rubbing her temples. "Jonathan, Emma doesn't know you. She's just a little girl. You can't just come into her life and expect everything to be perfect." "I don't expect that," Jonathan said quickly. "I just want a chance. I want to know my daughter, Olivia. I want to be there for her. Please just give me that chance." Olivia studied him for a long moment. Her expression softened just a little, but her guard was still up. "If I let you into her life, you can't disappear," she said firmly. "She's not some business deal you can walk away from if things get complicated." Jonathan nodded, his throat tight. "I swear, Olivia. I'm here to stay." A heavy silence filled the room before Olivia finally spoke. "She's at the park with my neighbor. If you really want to do this, you can meet her there." Jonathan's chest tightened. This was it. His chance. Jonathan drove to the nearby park, his nerves on edge. He had faced boardroom battles, multi-million-dollar negotiations, and high-stakes business deals, but none of it compared to the fear he felt now. Would Emma accept him? Would she even care who he was? As he parked his car, he spotted a small playground in the distance. His heart nearly stopped when he saw a little girl sitting on the swings, her tiny legs kicking back and forth. Even from far away he could see it, the resemblance. Emma. His daughter. A woman, Olivia's neighbor he assumed, stood nearby watching over her. Jonathan took a deep breath and approached. The neighbor looked up as he neared. You must be Jonathan. He nodded, feeling out of place in his expensive suit and polished shoes. The woman gave him a small smile and stepped aside. Emma looked up at him, her big, curious eyes locking onto his. "Hi," she said simply. Jonathan's heart clenched. "Hi, Emma." She tilted her head, just like Olivia used to when she was thinking. "Are you my mommy's friend?" Jonathan hesitated for a moment before kneeling down to her level. "I used to be," he said carefully. "But I'd really like to be your friend too." Emma studied him, her small hands gripping the swing's chains. "Do you have a daughter?" Jonathan felt a lump form in his throat. "I do," he said softly. "You?" Emma blinked, processing his words. "Me?" Jonathan nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm your daddy." The words felt foreign on his tongue, but they also felt right. Emma looked at him for a long moment, then did something that completely shattered him. She smiled. "You look like me," she said matter-of-factly. Jonathan let out a shaky breath, his vision blurring. "Yeah, I guess I do." Emma hopped off the swing. "Do you like ice cream?" Jonathan let out a small chuckle, nodding. "I love ice cream." "Me too." Emma grinned. "Mommy says it's bad for my teeth, but I think she's wrong." Jonathan laughed, feeling warmth spread through his chest. "How about we get some ice cream together?" Emma's eyes lit up. "Really?" Jonathan looked over at Olivia's neighbor, who gave him a small nod. "Really?" he said. Emma took his hand without hesitation, and at that moment Jonathan knew he would never let her go. Would Olivia truly trust Jonathan to stay? Could he prove that he was ready to be a father? Before going to next, please subscribe to our channel, like and share with friends. Jonathan held Emma's small hand in his own as they walked toward the ice cream shop. The warmth of her tiny fingers wrapped around his sent a rush of emotions through him. Love, guilt, hope, and an overwhelming need to make things right. He had spent years building his empire, believing that money and power were the only measures of success. But at that moment, as he looked down at his daughter skipping beside him, he realized how empty his life had been without her. "Do you like chocolate or vanilla?" he asked as they entered the shop. Emma scrunched her nose and thought. "Chocolate, but with rainbow sprinkles. And lots of them." Jonathan chuckled. "Good choice." They ordered their ice creams, and as they sat by the window, he watched Emma devour her treat with pure joy. She was so innocent, so full of life. It was hard to believe that just days ago, he had been oblivious to her existence. "Do you have a daddy?" Emma asked suddenly, licking a bit of ice cream off her fingers. Jonathan hesitated. "I did, a long time ago. He passed away when I was young." Emma's face fell. "Oh, that's sad." He nodded. "Yeah, it was. But it made me realize how important family is." Emma took another bite, thinking. "Does that mean you're gonna stay?" Jonathan's breath caught. She was so small, yet her words carried such weight. He reached across the table, taking her little hand in his. "Yes, sweetheart," he said firmly. "I'm not going anywhere." Later that evening, Jonathan stood outside Olivia's apartment. The sun had set, casting a golden glow over the city. He knew he had a long way to go to earn her trust, but he was ready to fight for it. Olivia opened the door, her expression guarded. "How did it go?" Jonathan smiled. "She's incredible. And she's smart just like you." Olivia sighed, leaning against the doorframe. "Jonathan, I need to know something. Are you here just because of guilt? Or do you really want to be in Emma's life?" Jonathan met her eyes, his voice steady. "I want to be her father. Not just in name, but in every way that matters. I know I messed up, Olivia. I can't change that. But I can be better. I will be better." She studied him for a long moment before finally stepping aside. "Come in." It was a small invitation, but to Jonathan, it meant everything. Over the next few weeks, Jonathan worked tirelessly to prove himself. He rearranged his entire schedule to make time for Emma, showing up every afternoon to take her to the park, help with her homework, and read her bedtime stories. Emma, in her innocent way, had already accepted him. But Olivia, she was still hesitant. One evening, as Jonathan was helping Emma build a puzzle, Olivia stood watching from the kitchen. "You're really trying, aren't you?" she said softly. Jonathan looked up. "I have to. She deserves a father. And you deserve to know you're not alone in this." Olivia exhaled, sitting across from him. "I've been doing this alone for so long. It's hard to believe you'll stay." Jonathan reached for her hand, but she pulled away. He understood. "I'll prove it," he said. Not with words, but with actions. Months passed, and Jonathan's presence became a constant in Emma's life. He learned how to braid her hair, attended her school events, and even suffered through tea parties with her stuffed animals. But the biggest moment came when Emma called him Daddy for the first time. They were walking in the park when she suddenly tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, can we get ice cream?" Jonathan froze. The word hit him like a bolt of lightning. He looked at Olivia, who gave him a small nod. His voice shook as he answered, "Of course, sweetheart." Tears burned his eyes as he lifted her into his arms, holding her close. In that moment he knew he had finally found what he had been searching for his entire life. Before going to next, please subscribe to our channel, like and share with friends. Jonathan had spent the last few months proving to Olivia and Emma that he was committed to being a father. But deep inside he knew his greatest test was yet to come. Would he stay when things got tough? Would he still be there when life threw challenges their way? One evening, as he walked into Olivia's apartment with a bag of Emma's favorite snacks, he saw Olivia sitting on the couch, looking worried. "Is everything okay?" he asked, placing the bag on the table. She sighed, rubbing her temples. "I got an offer for a promotion at work, but it's in another city." Jonathan's heart clenched. "Where?" "Chicago," she whispered. Silence filled the room. Chicago was hundreds of miles away. If Olivia accepted the job, Emma would move with her. And just like that, everything Jonathan had been building could slip through his fingers. Emma, who was busy coloring at the kitchen table, looked up. "Mommy, what's wrong?" Olivia forced a smile. "Nothing, sweetie. We're just talking." Jonathan sat down beside her. "Have you made a decision?" She hesitated. "It's a great opportunity. More stability. A better life for Emma. And for you?" She looked down. "I don't know." Jonathan reached for her hand. This time she didn't pull away. "Olivia, I've made a lot of mistakes. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that family isn't about money or promotions. It's about being together." She sighed. "It's not that simple." "Then let's make it simple," he said. "Stay. Or if you go, let me come with you." Her eyes widened. "You leave your company? Your entire life in New York?" Jonathan nodded. "I've spent my whole life chasing money, power, and success. But none of it means anything without Emma. Without you." Olivia's eyes softened. "I don't want to take Emma away from you, Jonathan. But I also don't want to make the wrong decision." Jonathan took a deep breath. "Then let's decide together. As a family." For the next few days, Olivia and Jonathan weighed their options. One evening they took Emma to the park, letting her run ahead while they sat on a bench. "I've worked so hard to build a stable life for Emma," Olivia said. "I never thought you'd be part of that picture." Jonathan smiled. "Neither did I. But here we are." She looked at him. "Are you really willing to leave everything for us?" "Without a doubt," he said. Just then Emma ran back out of breath. "Can we get ice cream, Daddy?" Jonathan's heart warmed at the word. He looked at Olivia, who gave him a knowing smile. "Yes, sweetheart," he said. "We can." And just like that, their future became clearer. Before going to next, please subscribe to our channel, like and share with friends. Jonathan sat in his office, staring at the city skyline. For years, this view had been his motivation. The towering buildings, the endless possibilities, the hunger for success. But today it felt empty. His mind was elsewhere. On Olivia. On Emma. On the decision that would change everything. His assistant knocked and entered. "Sir, the board meeting is in 5 minutes." Jonathan nodded but didn't move. Instead, he picked up his phone and dialed Olivia. "Hey," she answered, her voice calm but uncertain. "Have you made a decision?" he asked. She sighed. "I have." "Have you?" Jonathan exhaled. "Yes." Pause. Then Olivia spoke. "Meet me at the cafe where we first talked about Emma. Let's discuss this properly." Jonathan arrived at the cafe, his heart pounding. He saw Olivia already seated, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. She looked up and smiled softly as he sat down. "Emma's at school. I thought we could talk without distractions." He nodded. "So, what did you decide?" She took a deep breath. "I turned down the promotion." Jonathan's eyes widened. "You did?" She nodded. "I realized something, Jonathan. Stability isn't just about money or a better job. It's about family. And Emma needs her father in her life. I won't take that away from her." Relief flooded Jonathan's chest. "Olivia, I was ready to move to Chicago for you both. I was ready to walk away from everything." She smiled. "I know. And that means more than you'll ever know." They sat in silence for a moment, processing everything. Then Olivia reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. "What's this?" Jonathan asked. She slid it across the table. "Open it." He did. Inside was a document, joint custody papers. Jonathan looked up, his throat tight. "You're serious about this?" She nodded. "Emma deserves to have both of us. I'm willing to trust you, Jonathan. To co-parent, to make this work." He felt a lump in his throat. "Thank you, Olivia. I won't let you down." Weeks passed and life began to settle into a new normal. Jonathan adjusted his work schedule to spend time with Emma. He picked her up from school, helped her with homework, and even learned how to braid her hair, after several failed attempts. One evening, Olivia invited Jonathan over for dinner. It was the first time they were sitting together as a family, no tension, no arguments. Just them. As they laughed over Emma's stories, Olivia caught Jonathan's gaze. "You're different," she said softly. He smiled. "I finally know what matters." Emma ran up and hugged them both. "I love you, Mommy. I love you, Daddy." And at that moment, Jonathan knew. He had finally found what he had been searching for all along. A family. A home. A second chance.